The Python Bytes livestream will be starting in just a moment. Thank you so much for joining us today. Python Bytes is a weekly news and event show for the Python community. We'll be covering the important news and releases that you should know about. Please put feedback and questions in the chat, and when possible, we'll feature your comment on the show. I'm Michael Kennedy, and my co-host Brian Ocken, and even sometimes a special guest. We'll see you on screen in just a minute. So be sure to subscribe to the podcast in your podcast player apps. Just search for Python Bytes or visit pythonbytes.fm. And here we are. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hey, Brian. Welcome to the live streamers. If you put some comments into the show notes, we'll try to incorporate those. And we're going to get started right now. Brian, you want to kick us off?
Sure. Hello, and welcome to Python Bytes, where we deliver Python news and headlines directly to your earbuds. This is episode 212. I can't believe the numbers keep going up.
I know.
We're recording this December 16th, 2020. I'm Brian Ocken, of course.
I'm Michael Kennedy.
And I'm Sherry Eskenazi.
Yay, we have a guest. So,
yes, welcome, Sherry. It's great to have you here. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, you got some cool projects, and you wrote to us and said, hey, here's a project I'm working on. And we're like, well, why don't you just come on the show and, tell people about it? So we'll get to that later. It'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Brian, you should do something with PyTest. I heard it's popular.
Yeah. So, it might not be a surprise. I am a fan of PyTest. But I wanted to shout out because the people at PyTest have been working pretty hard at making things better. And they've got, so right now we've got Python 6.2. I think we're at 6.2.1 now, but 6.2 came up recently. Ooh, neat. Look, changelog. Cool. So there's a few things that I really like that came up with the 6.2 release. So PyTester, there used to be, plugin authors are going to be the only ones that really care about this, maybe. But there was a fixture called testdir that works fine to test your plugins, but PyTester is got a way better name, and it also uses pythonpath.lib instead of the old
the OS path.
Well, it was a PyPath thing. It was similar to pathlib, but their own thing. So this is better. That's cool.
Yeah, that's clear to use what's built in.
Yeah. A couple other features I like. Verbose mode. Well, there used to be a way to, you had to, if you had a test that was skipped or X failed or X passed, you could add a reason, but to get the reason was a little extra work. And now you can just turn it into if you pass verbose mode, you get those reasons out. That's pretty cool. And the last one I wanted to highlight, last feature that came up, is change to the monkey patch.
Okay.
So monkey patch is a way it's kind of like mocking. It's a little kind of like a way to easily mock. But the thing that changed was a context manager. So they added a context manager, and so either within a test you can just for part of the test do the patch change, or it's also exposed at the PyTest namespace level, so you can even use monkey patches in helper functions and stuff like that. So
okay,
that's pretty neat.
How's that compared to like the patching with context block?
Well, yeah, it's exactly like that. So you could use a with block to patch it. So
fantastic. Cool. I think this is great. Like it's cool to see PyTest moving along, and there aren't really that many challengers these days, right? It's pretty much the leading way to go. Yeah,
there's still projects that use unit test, and I don't know why they're still using it, but PyTest is there.
The one that makes sense to me is I don't want a dependency. I just want to be able to run it.
Okay, but yeah, sure. There's just that.
You're not convinced.
Well, how many projects don't have dependencies?
Yeah, that's true.
And the other bit, I kind of like it being outside of Python because you can, like, let's say you upgrade your Python. I don't think you really want to upgrade your test runner at the same time you're upgrading Python.
Well, and also you get a lot higher velocity, right? Like the reason they didn't bring requests in to replace the internal URL HTTP stuff in Python was like it's going to slow requests down.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it would slow PyTest down too.
And then I got a ping, kind of on a related note, from somebody that was using a plugin I wrote called PyTest Check, and said, "Hey, I'm having trouble running this with PyTest 6." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, people are using that!" So, yeah, apparently there are some people using it. So I updated it to run with.
Now it's compatible.
6. Yeah,
sweet. Sherry, do you do any testing?
I not with PyTest. I don't have experience with that yet.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Definitely a good one.
I know of a good book if you want to learn. So.
Sure.
That's right. Well, the next thing I want to talk about, it takes a minute for this to sink in here, and it's SQLite as an application file format. So we've all heard of SQLite, right? It's a database, but it's not a server. It's just the file, and it's embedded into your application, so it's in process, which actually makes it incredibly fast, right? It also, SQLite ships with Python. So you don't have to have any dependencies even to use it. You just, connect to it. You probably do want to have dependencies like, say, SQL Alchemy or something like that, but you don't have to, right? So there's a cool thing that's actually part of the documentation, more or less, for SQLite, but it was brought to my attention by, over here, let me pull up my notes, by John Boltmeyer. John Boltmeyer, thanks for letting us know about this one. And the idea is that we so often, if we have some kind of custom file format for our application, whether it's a command line tool or a GUI or maybe even a website, although those often default to databases anyway, you have to think about, how am I going to store this file? Should we put it in JSON? Maybe we could use some XML, Brian. Does that sound good?
No, XML.
But, JSON is super popular, right? But even with JSON, you've got to figure out, okay, well, these are the blocks and here's how you read it. And if some other application wants to talk to it, they need to work with it. And there's all these really interesting advantages of saying, well, let's just have a single binary file that is a SQLite database, and just that's our file format. Much like docx has its, is the file format for Word, or XLSX for Excel, or, you name it, right? All these different apps have their own file format. Camtasia has its own, and so on. That could easily just be a SQLite file. So if you go down here in this thing, there's a bunch of things that it highlights. It says, look, simplified app development. You don't have to write any code to figure out how to work with this file, right? Like, you've already got the SQLite built into Python. Everything's contained into a single file, right? So you can just easily move it around. It becomes queryable because it's SQL, right? So you just select star from table where such and such. And now your app has search built in. That's pretty cool. A bunch of tools like we've talked about, Beekeeper Studio and things like that, they would just load this up and work with it, right? So anything that works with SQLite is now working with it. Cross-platform, right? 32-bit, 64-bit, Windows, Mac OS. Atomic, right? So multiple things can be working with it concurrently. If you make changes to it, you could do like 3 changes and something goes wrong, there's an exception, it just rolls it back. Like, these things are all pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. Incremental updates. This is another one that's interesting, is with, say, something like a JSON file, you'd have to load the whole thing up unless you're doing something really intense. You would change something small about the file, then you'd write the whole thing back. But the way SQLite works is you just make changes to little spots in the binary file as you insert stuff. So writes are a lot simpler. Super extensible. And what else? Performance, right? It's a lot faster than, they have compare some other styles. Like you could have a pile of files like Git or something like that. It's multi-threaded safe, so multiple processes can access it, multiple languages, all sorts of stuff. And also finally, documentation. Like you want to document how your file format works, you just describe what the tables are and what the columns mean, and that's it. What do you think?
I actually really like using single file database styles like SQLite.
Yeah.
For persistence layers, because you don't really have to think about it at this point. I've also used TinyDB for a similar reason, but
Yeah, TinyDB is interesting. I think that uses JSON blocks, little bunch of JSON files it kind of organizes, right?
Yeah.
Something like that. Shari, what do you think of this?
Yeah, it's this is actually new material for me. So
Well, honestly, me too. I looked at it and I was like, well, of course I know I can use SQLite, but I just hadn't really put it together. Like, well, this is actually a really cool use of a file format that other people can use.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's also a really cool project called Dataset, DATASETTE, or something like that. And another one related to it called Dogsheep, which is a really interesting project that takes all these SQLite and SQL-oriented data inputs and allows you to bring them together and do reporting and analysis on them. So I did an interview recently with Simon, guy behind the project, over on TalkPython. It's not out yet, but it's already recorded and it will be out. And there's just all these interesting things you can do once data gets into these common formats. So this just is another example. And he also pointed out that there's all these different SQLite databases already on your machine, like the Photos library for macOS. That's a SQLite file.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's like hundreds of these on your computer, and you just didn't know it. So anyway, this is hopefully solves some problems for people trying to create. What are we going to do for our app format? Our equivalent of docx. What's that going to be? Well, it definitely could be one of these.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. All right, next up, Shari, tell us about your project.
Okay.
This is the one I mentioned before.
Yeah, so I'll start off by saying I noticed that kids' programming books are either really abstract or they don't teach the reader how to write a simple program, or it's either that or they're too intensive in the format of a textbook or a book made up of a lot of tutorials with step-by-step instructions. And so that's why I thought of taking a different approach by creating a programming book in the form of a picture book that tells a story with complete computer programs that represent real-life situations. So my latest book is called A Day in Code Python, and it's now live on Kickstarter. It tells a story using Python programs that describe real-life situations in the code. And so for each 2-page spread in the story, there's a code page that has a complete Python program that describes a situation in the story, and a full-page illustration next to it that shows the scene that's being described. So in that way, the book is presenting Python code examples in a continuous story, and the code is explained below each program. And each program presents a new Python concept. And so you might be wondering, like, why did I choose a picture book? And so there's a few main reasons why I thought of doing that. And so, of course, the most obvious is that a picture book is fun and colorful, and who doesn't like a picture book? But I also wanted to show that everyday events can be described with the logic of code, and I think the programming concepts can be better understood by making the code relatable. And I also wanted the book to be compact and show code examples conveniently. So as a beginner, you don't need to dig through a big book looking for basic code examples. And also by having nice full-page illustrations, my aim is that the reader, and kids especially, will enjoy the book in the same way as a normal picture book that is flipped through again and again. And while they're enjoying the pictures, they'll be looking at the code too, and their understanding of the programming concepts will be reinforced. And so this book will be in the same format as my first book, A Day in Code, which is written in the C programming language. And that book was actually released a few weeks ago on Amazon, and I had previously launched a Kickstarter campaign for it. And after delivering the book, I got a great response from kids to college students to adults. So it's really for all ages. And so now I'm focused on creating a Python version of that book. And you can pre-order.
I think I think a Python book makes a lot of sense because it's the most popular learning programming language these days, right?
Yeah, it's definitely been gaining in popularity. Yeah, very popular. It's everywhere.
I like the idea of just sort of letting it wash over kids, right? You don't necessarily, maybe the goal isn't necessarily, might not be to teach them programming and have them come out the other side of interacting with the book, actually writing code, but kind of seeing the examples and just making code something that you kind of talk about, like reading or like writing or like history or anything. So it's a cool format. What do you think, Brian?
I think this is great. So do you have like a target age in mind, or?
So that's why I say, like, well, of course, being a picture book, it's great for kids, but I've also gotten a lot of people, adults, who say that they enjoy it too, and it's just a fun format for anyone to enjoy starting to learn programming, or even just looking at it as a reference, even if you're experienced in programming, or maybe you want to refresh your memory. It's just a convenient way to look back at simple code examples that go over all the basics of Python. So functions, dictionaries, lists, tuples, and all that stuff.
Yeah. And it's almost funded on Kickstarter. So it sounds like you're going to make it happen. You're like $1,000 away, and I'm sure the people will be interested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to like order one. So
thank you.
This is great. Yeah. So once you get it funded, when do they come out?
So right now, the estimated delivery time is in April, and it'll be a special edition book. So I'm actually getting it printed at a US-based facility that allows me to print with glossy paper, 100-pound paper, and have a feature of having printed end sheets at the front and back of the book. And so these features aren't available once the book goes on Amazon. So
cool.
Yeah. Great project. Happy to see it gaining some traction. Hopefully people can make it happen, because it'll be neat.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So Brian, before we move on to the next one, speaking of books, maybe tell people about what we're up to so they can support us if they wish.
Yeah, well, the best way to support, let's say, me is by picking up a copy of Python Testing with PyTest. I still get feedback all the time of people thanking me for writing this, because it helps them in their job, helps them get stuff done better. So it's really awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then if they want to learn some more about all sorts of types of Python, they should probably check out.
They should. Like, we've got a couple of new courses. I just released the Fast API course a couple of weeks ago, and that's such a neat framework. We also have our Excel to Python and the Python memory management and tips deep dive course. So those and many more are out there for people to take. If they're interested and they want to learn Python, there's a whole bunch of ways: the day in the code, PyTest, and then these courses as well.
I always forget that you have a memory management one.
Yeah, that's ironic, isn't it?
So
yes, Barry. I don't.
Are we doing this next? Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
This is what's next. Yeah.
Nice. So so I can't believe we haven't done this, but actually, partly because I can't believe I just noticed this. So I didn't know about this. Yes, Barry, there is a Python. So it's pretty funny. So this is at azure.pythonlabs.com, and it used to be just normally at www.pythonlabs.com. So it's moved, but this is back from, this is kind of an inside Python joke. It's back, Tim Peters posted it in 2004, and apparently it's a question. There was a question from Barry. It just says Barry. I'm assuming it's Barry Warsaw.
Yeah, I would guess.
Asked the question, what is Python Labs now? Or is there a Python Labs now? I don't know. Guido owns the domain name, which is probably the biggest claim to Python Lab hood there is. And and then Tim Peters replies with a very, yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus-esque answer. And I just encourage people to go read it. It's hilarious. There's stuff like, Barry, your little friends are wrong. They've been affected by the skepticism of the skeptical age. Yes, Barry, there is a Python Labs. It exists as certainly as love and generosity and devotion exist. Alas, how dreary would be a world with no Python Labs. So it goes on like that, and it's pretty funny. So I encourage people to check it out. And
how funny.
Have you seen this before?
I've never seen this, and apparently it's from 2004 originally, but now it's on Microsoft Azure, and I'm wondering if this has anything to do with Guido van Rossum moving over to Microsoft.
Yeah, I assume so. It's just I was going to try to look at where I found this, and I think just somebody mentioned that it moved to Azure like a couple months ago or recently. So
yeah, funny. Another piece of news I caught that was not officially on the radar, but friend of the show and our friend Anthony Shaw, he is headed towards Guido as well. You hear that?
I did.
Yeah, he joined Microsoft as some kind of Python specialist. I'm not sure. Exactly.
So I hope they throw some money at him to try to move him to the Northwest. That would be cool.
That would be cool. Yeah, that we could hang out with him more. He's far away. He's in Australia, which is a long way. But it's going to be hard for him to leave. He lives on the beach in like a picture. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
He always posts his surfing report and stuff like that. So.
Exactly, because life's hard sometimes.
We surf in Oregon.
Yeah. For about 5 seconds. And then we change color. Then we come out. All right. Let's see. What's the next one here? I think. Yeah. So remember, Brian, I did an extra the other day.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Because
I had so much stuff. Well, let's do an extra this time because, oh my goodness, there's so much stuff. I'm not just going to turn this into another element here of the show. So first of all, we spoke about NumPy and installing, I think it was on Big Sur, it was having some problems. It wouldn't install correctly. I don't remember if it was Windows or Linux or Mac OS. I think it felt like it was Mac OS. But anyway, it was a problem with one of the platforms. But what was interesting is I got a message from Grice that, hey, quick follow-up on episode 208. Did you know, I didn't know, did you know that in your requirements txt file, you can say like numpy equal 1.19.3 semicolon and then platform. So you can say platform underscore system equal Windows. Then another different version of numpy platform equals Linux. Another one platform equals Darwin. Isn't that cool? Yeah. I had no idea that you could kind of split the requirements file to say the Windows install gets this and the Linux install gets that.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I'd never seen this, but the problem was NumPy was not, it was Windows Update that broke NumPy. That's what it was. And so here's a way to pin the Windows version to an older NumPy, but let the other stuff be newer. That's what it was. So here's a really simple way to fix that, huh?
Yeah, I hope I never need this trick.
Yes, exactly. And then I got another message from William Silva. And he said, hey, check this thing out. You probably heard of material design, the way that Google styles some of their apps and so on. And we've all heard of probably the best way to build cross-platform apps with sort of native widgets. Maybe Electron's the best way, but native widgets would be with Qt, and PySide 6 and probably PyQt. I don't know if it's upgraded yet, but there's this cool theme that you can put on to make it look material. Doesn't that look neat?
Oh, that is neat. I like it.
Yeah. So often these cross-platform apps, they just look, boy, I don't know. They just look like they're standing out weird, but this looks really nice here. I totally like it. So I'll put that in the show notes. People can check that out. Number 3. I just announced this. I thought it was pretty neat. I wrote a blog post that TalkPython hit 20 million downloads and is the number 2 developer podcast out there. I just found out. So I wrote a blog post just sort of celebrating that.
That's impressive. Very impressive. Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah. Thanks. And by the way, Python Bytes is around 6 million and going. So we're pretty strong over here as well.
Nice.
Yeah. Awesome. Pyramid 2, the web framework, is coming out, and I actually tested it. TalkPython Training, which is about 25,000 lines of Python, is written in it. Just upgraded it, ran everything, all the PyTest pass. Everything else is good, so Pyramid 2 is looking solid. Not too much change, but it's good to see how it's going. Python 3.9.1 is out with 282 changes from that. That's a lot.
Oh, let's go through them all.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm gonna say it like 10x speed, if you don't mind. No, the other notable thing, almost the reason I'm bringing this out, is that the Python on macOS also ships as a universal binary, which means it has an Intel version and an Apple M1 version, which leads to all sorts of interesting weirdness when you pip install things that expect Intel. But nonetheless, it's out there and people can start playing with it. I actually did a live stream, it's number 6, with Paul Everett from JetBrains. sort of exploring what's the Python experience on the Apple M1 Mac Mini. So that's like an hour-long video he and I did last Friday, and I will link to that. You can check it out.
Well, what's the punchline, though?
The punchline is almost everything works, but we couldn't get Jupyter Lab to work for some reason.
Oh, okay.
But everything else seemed to be pretty much fine. But the trick is you kind of need, a lot of times you're going to work with something that maybe doesn't have an M1 version of the package or the wheel. But if you go to the terminal and you create a copy of it, and then you tell it to run under Rosetta, every Python command you issue becomes a Intel Python command. So if you pip install something, it'll use the wheels for the Intel version of Mac, not the M1 version of Mac and stuff like that. So it's kind of your escape hatch. Like once you open up that terminal, you've fallen back into the Intel world. So you don't have compatibility issues there.
Okay.
Anyway, we did a ton of that with stuff. Sherry, do you have an M1 Mac? Are you on? Are you
No,
excited
actually,
about this? No,
I'm not on a Mac. I'm not on that.
What's your OS of choice?
Well, Microsoft.
Yeah, Windows. Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're doing good stuff. Like, there's a ton of Python things happening over there. That's pretty exciting. All right, and then last thing, this is brand shiny new, is we have the Python Steering Council selected. So we have Pablo Galindo, we have Carol Willing, Brett Cannon, Barry Warsaw, and last one, T. Wooters were all selected to be the new Steering Council folks. So that's exciting. And yeah, that's it. Those are my extra 6X extras.
Well, cool.
Yeah, awesome. And I guess last thing to talk about is a little computer vision.
Yeah. So this is like a really cool product I found out about a few years ago. And it's called OpenMV Cam H7 is the latest one. It's a microcontroller development board with an onboard camera that runs machine vision algorithms with MicroPython. The OpenMV IDE and libraries make it really easy to run complex machine vision algorithms with simple Python code for things like color tracking, face detection, eye tracking. One particular application that I really like, which I did, is detecting April tags, which are like QR codes in that they're 2D binary pattern squares, but they encode a much smaller amount of bits, between 4 and 12 bits, rather than a QR code, which can store up to 3 kilobytes. And so by encoding a smaller amount of data, it makes them easier to detect and be able to be robustly detected with variations in the camera viewing angle and the lighting conditions, and they can be detected from a longer distance.
Wow.
And so it's just so convenient because the OpenMV IDE has an April tag generator, so you can easily create the tags and print them out. And it has an April tag MicroPython library, so you can easily implement the algorithm. And the code will return the rotation and the ID code, among other information about it. And the company OpenMV has said they want to be the Arduino of machine vision, because they have such an Arduino-like user interface, and you can view the output of the camera in the IDE. And they actually just announced a few weeks ago that they're now partnered with Arduino to support computer vision on a new wireless Arduino board called Portenta H7 with OpenMV firmware and the OpenMV IDE programmed in MicroPython. So it's really cool to be able to easily implement these complex machine vision algorithms with just a few lines of Python code on a plug-and-play STM32 microcontroller board. And
yeah, do you know what it costs?
The latest one, I think it's like around $60. Like, I'm trying to remember now.
Yeah, okay, 65. Yeah, 65. That's to set up a little computer vision system for $65. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I was very, very impressed how just taking out of the box and running this this example code that came with the IDE and was able to detect these April tags. And it's interesting to see how it compares to QR codes, and they're more robust in detecting.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and they have a little code example here that's quite straightforward, right? You just set the pixel format, how many frames, and then take a snapshot and run things like image.find blobs, and like magic happens on that line.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool. So I don't know, one of the things that I've always wanted to do, and I don't know if I'll ever do, but I want to create an IoT course, and I would like the final exercise of the course to be setting up a camera so you can have a multiplayer or a computer against human game, but have the computer do it through computer vision. So over like a checkers board or a tic-tac-toe, like you draw on it, the computer looks at it and says, I want to go there, or something. That would be so fun. And it looks like this might be something I could use to make that happen.
Yeah, definitely. I read that you can run TensorFlow-Lite on it too, so you can train AI. You can train models for AI with TensorFlow running on this.
Run it right on the device, not shipping it to the cloud.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd make it really responsive. That's cool. Brian, what do you think? What would you do with it?
I think you should run with the chat that board thing and do a chess thing, and then have and actually have the you should get into robotics also and have the
arm
just move it, yeah.
When the claw comes out, grabs it. You know, how about Settlers of Catan? Come on, if we could automate Settlers of Catan, and you know what would be even better actually would be not just have the computer play, but in this like whole weird social distancing bizarro world we live in, like you could set it up so you and your friends just play and like both have a board and the thing just tells you, oh, your friend moved here, you got to move that over. That'd be great.
I've never even got through the instructions on Settlers of Catan yet.
One of my daughters loves it and one of them hates it. They're like, please, we can't play it. It takes so long. We can't do that. Yeah, it's funny. But anyway, I think this is a cool device, and it would be really fun to like, you know, play around with it. And $65 for the whole thing, that seems pretty affordable.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, what else have we got? I don't have any extras, Brian. I've already gone through my 6 extras. You got any extras?
I just have one shout out to, I guess, the Python community on Twitter. I just want to say, I don't know, I'm getting a little cheesy today near Christmas, but this is a sort of a silly thing, but I saw there was a discussion on Twitter. It happened last night and today. There was somebody named Nicole Carlson that started this question of, do you say for KWARGS, do you pronounce that keyword arguments or do you pronounce it kwargs?
Oh my gosh.
And I had never considered pronouncing it kwargs before. How about you, Michael?
I think I did. I think I do say kwargs. No, I say KWARGs. That's what I say.
Okay. Yeah, so that was brought up by a couple of people that they used that.
Yeah, KWARGs. That's what I say.
And so I'd never even consider. I like quarks. I'm gonna start using that now.
Sounds like it comes from Star Trek. Maybe.
But yeah,
a Klingon word. I don't know.
Or Quark from Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, exactly.
So Vicky Boyka said, I've never even considered not saying kwargs, and a whole bunch of other people had different comments, and it just I just wanted to bring this up because it reminded me of like a conversation we'd have over beer or something at PyCon or in the in the hallway or something like that, and that little bit of just stupid conversation around Python, I just really appreciate it, and I like that little bit is alive on Twitter at least a little bit. So
yeah, funny.
It's good.
Sherry, how do you say it?
Oh gosh, I don't normally say that.
You know what's funny is like when there's all these different little acronymy words in programming, and it's funny when people, they mostly just read them the whole time, and all of a sudden they have to say them, right? Like pypi.org, right? Like some people say PyPy and some people say PyPI and so on, right? I'm on the PyPI side, but it's just, sometimes you don't have to pronounce it, but sometimes you do. And then
I'm not sure which side to take on this issue.
Yeah.
This changed my life though. I'm in kwargs all the time now.
Right on. Sounds good. Sherry, anything else you want to give a shout out to while we're here?
I don't know. I mean, just thank you so much for listening, and thank you for checking out my Kickstarter campaign for A Day in Code Python.
Yeah, it's great to have you here this time. All right, Brian, I think we should finish it with a joke. What do you think?
Sure.
All right, so I'm having this problem. I lived in this apartment complex, the 4th floor, the 4th apartment on that floor, and yeah, the number of the apartment was 404. But what's the problem?
404 apartment not found.
Exactly. Every time I order a pizza, the delivery guy tells me he couldn't find the place.
Was that really your apartment?
No, I wish it was. That'd have been awesome. No, I lived on 214. I don't know if that's an HTTP status code, but that's as close as it's been. 108. I don't know what 100s even really do, and I know they're status codes, but I don't know 108 off the top of my head either. But this is a good one. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I like that too.
Well, I got one last joke.
Okay, hit us.
Why do software developers, or many of them, prefer dark mode?
Why? Tell us.
Because bugs are attracted to light. Oh,
yes. Awesome.
I heard this on Twitter. It's terrible. But and I told my family, it's one of those you tell a joke, sometimes some jokes you tell your family and they just stare at you.
Yeah, they don't get it. All right, really quick, I want to follow up with one comment from the live stream. And if you're not listening, you're not interested, you don't know about yet the live stream, we're also streaming this onto YouTube now. So check out pythonbytes.fm/YouTube and you can subscribe to upcoming live streams. But Brian, there's a question here. When's your second edition coming out? Come on, man.
There is no planned date.
Okay. So. And then also we have the German version of KW-args. I say KW-args. KW-args. That's just like saying KW in the German pronunciation, args.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks so much. Sherry, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was really fun.
Yeah, you bet. Bye. Bye, everyone. Thanks for watching.
Bye.
And listening.